clicked over to 12 noon. So assuming, Mark, I'm just testing that you can hear me okay and you can see my screen okay?
Yes, I can see your screen and I can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, well, welcome everybody to today's session on moving from MX to OpenRose Designer. Really, this is the second of our adoption webinars on the discovery process today. There's two more coming up in the next couple of months, and we've already had the first one a couple of weeks ago, which was a run through of OpenRose Designer. Now, today's session is not a technical session. I think I mentioned this last time, and really it's going to be me sort of discussing or talking about some of the topics and things to consider when migrating from MX to OpenRose Designer. The slide deck, well, first of all, there's going to be a recording of today's session. If you've registered, then you'll get the recording already. And also, I can make the slide deck available to you if required. I have my colleague, Mark Blancher, who's been co-presenting over the past 2 years, and he's available to answer any questions as we go through the session today. But as I say, it's not a technical session today. It's a presentation, a PowerPoint on me, and I'll be talking around the PowerPoint and then shelling out to some other things of interest to see. So I won't actually be showing a great deal in OpenRose Designer today. So as I say, what we're covering today really is the process that you need to start thinking about when moving from MX to OpenRose Designer. So we'll be looking at what we consider are some milestones for you to consider during the adoption process. So these steps are things that you need to go to. Now, not all of them will apply to everybody, and we're starting at really base principles here as well. So so not all of them will apply to everybody. We'll discuss potentially what workflows you might need to consider, and there'll be some talk about administration and local data sets, which will be useful for you guys. So as I say, it's more of a show and tell session today. It's really aimed at MX users, but I think the whole process is applicable to any of our civil users migrating from one of the legacy products to OpenRose Designer. We're here to help as well. So if you have any questions about this going forwards, if you want any assistance with any of the topics that we're discussing today, you can either contact Mark or myself or log a service request, which is probably the best idea. But Mark and I are available. Part of our job is now, probably 50% of the time Mark and I spend now is helping accounts to migrate to OpenRose Designer. So we're quite experienced at what people are asking, and we've already worked with several large accounts to start the process of migration. And what I'm talking about today is really based on the experience that we've had with those so far. Okay, so I also don't think we probably won't spend more than half an hour, 40 minutes, depends how much I talk today on this. I'm pretty sure it won't be the full hour, but we'll see how things go. So let's have a look at some of the milestones. Oh, that's just the usual housekeeping. So let's have a look at some of the milestones that we've worked with accounts on, and much of this is I'd like to reiterate, is a two-way process. You know, we're absolutely here to help, and we can certainly work with you on your adoption, but there is obviously it's a change for many of you guys who've been using MX for a long time, and we can work with you on this. So it's not a case of us telling you what to do. It's a lot of this is actually, we found, is you users telling us how you want to work and what you need to know about OpenRose Designer and how to set things up. So so it's really a two-way process. Both parties have a vested interest in making this work. So some of the early things we need to do is to identify any decision makers within your organization. This allows us to talk to them about the options going forward and why it's important to start thinking about the migration process away from MX to OpenRose Designer. We talked about those last time, but really MX is a fantastic tool. The results it produces are still, in my opinion, second to none. But it is quite old in the long in the tooth now. The underlying technology is over 30 years old, and whilst the product still performs very, very well from a design perspective, fitting in with more modern workflows, it just is starting to struggle and show its age. And from a Bentley perspective as well, maintaining the product is getting more and more difficult. Certain files aren't updated regularly by some of the things that we use, like Microsoft registries. So it is becoming a little bit more difficult for us to maintain. And indeed, we won't really be producing any more technical fixes to bug fixes to MX going forward. So, it is something that you're going to obviously start to need to consider in the short to medium term. So we talked to you about, we try and identify division makers who may well be end users as well. So, end users certainly have a part to play within the decision-making process. We try and make sure that the accounts are aware of our support policy moving forward. So, exactly when MX is going to retire. Obviously, things that have happened this year have caused us to sort of change and extend certain things. So the support policy is available on the website, but it is subject to any changes that Bentley feel necessary to moving forwards. One thing that we've hopefully been managing to do via our webinars is actually make users aware of the Connect Edition products. When we first started doing these a couple of years ago, one of the big things that we found is that people weren't aware of OpenRose Designer. So I think we're a bit further down the path on that now, but we can still we'd still like to work with you to make you aware of the details of OpenRose, and of course any of the other products associated with that as well. So for example, Open Site Designer, some of the geotechnical tools that are available within it as well, and fundamentally how it can interact with both our other products and the new methodologies, the new workflows that are happening within our industry. We try and identify that there is an interest in upgrading. I mean, personally, I think it's something that you definitely need to consider. You definitely need to have an interest in upgrading, because the way the industry is going, and NMX doesn't necessarily support the industry workflows moving forwards. So that's something that we talk with you about. Something I'm going to come on to a little bit later is OpenRose Designer Connect Edition collateral. There's loads and loads of information out there which will help you to understand the product and how to make a decision or start to consider decisions. So we make sure that we supply you with everything that we have. So that includes the background information on OpenRose Designer. There's loads and loads of webinars that we've done in the past, which are all on either YouTube or the community sites. And there's also lots of information on other parts, more specific parts of OpenRose Designer as well. But certainly the links to the webinars that we've done over the past 12 months have been geared towards migrating from MX to OpenRose Designer. So we furnish users with all of that sort of information even before we start showing bits of the product to the users. So there's plenty of background, so it allows you to read up and understand how OpenRose Designer works, and starts the old cogs rotating to see if there are any specific questions that you're going to be able to ask. Once we've done that, we like to identify any initial impediments. So anything that you guys immediately come up with, not necessarily from a technical perspective, maybe from a use or or the such like. So any initial impediments that there is to the upgrade process. And that can be many and varied things, some more detailed than others, some actual technical design issues, or maybe training or installation or packaging, or those sorts of things as well. So identifying any initial impediments before we even talk about workflows. We also discussed if there are any threats to the upgrade, to the adoption process as well, whatever they may be. And again, they could be many and varied. So that's really the start of the first phase, really, to deal with the adoption. So showing a keenness, identifying the key people to make that decision, and furnishing you with enough information to be able to start thinking about the process of it. Now, many users that we have at the moment are already way past this stage, and as I say, hopefully the webinars that we've done over the past couple of years have taken us past a lot of this stage already. So probably after this first step, we get into the more technical discussions, the more detailed discussions on how to adopt OpenRose Designer. Now, I think one bit I've missed out is that if anybody really needs it, then we can give the overview demo that we did a couple of weeks ago, obviously not in person at the moment, but via a webcast. And we've done this to several organisations already, have asked for it. It's available for you to see, and pretty much matches what we did a couple of weeks ago. So that is available online, but we're more than happy to go through that with any organisations that feel the need, and really it's just an overview of the functionality available within OpenRose Designer. Not detailed training, not detailed design tasks, but just an overview of what you can do. So importing terrains, geometry, corridors, drawing reports, drawings, analysis, etc., just so that you can see that you can replicate the workflow, the style of work that you did in MX in OpenRose Designer, which, as I say, I'm pretty confident that we can do 99.9% of what you could do in MX now. So once we've identified the actual interest and the need to upgrade, we can start working through any specific workflow discussions. We can start explaining about workspaces, and these are all quite detailed stuff. For example, we've been talking with somebody about designing a junction that they've done inside of MX and replicating that workflow inside of OpenRose Designer. As far as workspaces goes, a lot of the workspace discussion centers on how to display things that they used to display inside of MX in OpenRose Designer. So we've worked on producing a set of feature definitions that can be included in a workspace which replicate the detailed design feature and style sets. And we've also worked on one for the MX Road feature and style set as well, so that we're starting to see, we're starting to replicate the style, the annotation that you've been familiar with inside of MX. A lot of organisations as well are using this as, if they have more than one office or they have more than one design team, are using this as a good time to consolidate their styles, their the way they work as well in a workspace. We've never really had the idea of workspaces inside of MX. MX has never properly used a workspace. So we've always worked on public-private project folders, and you can store feature and style sets on the network to use across your organisation. Having said that, many organisations have a specific feature and style set, or even an individual user's created their own feature and style set. So there was never huge uniformity across an organisation. So people are starting to consider that in an organisational workspace. Now that's coupled here with the local data sets that we have as well. And I think we've covered these in quite a bit of detail before. There is a UK data set which at the moment doesn't have feature definitions similar to those in MX, but we are looking to incorporate example feature definitions for detailed design, detailed survey, MX road feature and style sets. So that local data sets are an interesting way to open the discussion about workspaces. In my opinion, they're a good basis for you to start your own customized workspace, and it's quite key to how this works. And Mark and I have both some experience of working on workspaces for organisations now as well, and it just allows you to set things up how you want it. And often it's a one-off thing that you do at the start of the process, and you rarely have to go back and change it. And there are, of course, it's like with feature and style sets. You may want to tinker around with them occasionally, but for the majority of the time, you set them up to start with, and you don't really need to go and revisit them that often. And as I say, Mark and I have got some experience of that, so we're happy to help work with workspaces. As I mentioned, the local data set, the UK data set, contains most of the things that you need to work with in the UK. So it's got the technical. It's from the TD technical design documents, TD 993, etc. I believe they might be changing that or have changed that already. I'm not 100% sure, but it's got all the information you need for transition lengths, design speeds, minimum radii, etc., built into it, which you can apply as the design goes through. And it also includes stopping sight distance calculation files and super elevation rules files as well. So everything you need for the UK design standards. And we are working at including some feature definitions, annotation groups, etc., for what we have inside of MX. So these are the kind of questions we expect to be asked, and these are the things that you need to consider, or we can discuss with you. Now, the workflow, as I say, the workflows discussions is quite, probably to us that we found, the workflow discussion is probably the longest process that we've had with our accounts, and it's safe to point out that we're not expecting this to be an overnight transition. We're not expecting people to start using OpenRoads Designer a week after it and migrating from MX. It isn't. The experience has told us that this is not an overnight thing, and which is why we're happy to work with you. And the workflow requirements seem to be the ones that take the longest to move forward with. So what I'm thinking about here is things like, well, how do I design? I've always used design 100, 101, 102, etc. in my MX input files to design a carriageway. How do I replicate the same thing in OpenRoads Designer? I've always used Design 145, what have you, to create radii around bell-mouth junctions. How do I do the same thing in OpenRoads Designer? And I've always created super elevation in MX this way. How do I do and replicate the same thing in OpenRoads Designer? How do I create a lay-by? All these sorts of things. So they're the kind of workflows that we've been trying to work through with our accounts, with our users, the ones we've worked with so far. And what we've been doing is answering specific questions. Okay, if you want to display a surface analysis, level band analysis inside of MX, you do it using the surface analysis tools. You can do the same thing using some of the view options inside of OpenRoads Designer. So it's these questions. How do I do this? I've always done it like this. How do I do this? So we've worked in several ways. Some people are quite happy. Some accounts have been happy with producing a spreadsheet of equivalent options inside of from MX and OpenRoads Designer.